Okay, let's go. The presentation is about turning Earth observation research into viable product or service. So I was a young researcher who started the Earth observation company, a co-founder. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kappa Zeta Estonia. The presentation will be mainly about, let's say, the social and organizational aspects. But if you have some technical questions, then maybe I can answer the technical questions also. Recently not doing too much technical work, but still I like it. I like the Earth observation technology. Whenever you have questions, please just interrupt me. I'm here for you. I'm not here for the radio doing a monologue. The more you will get out from it if you ask questions. This is today's menu. Firstly, a little bit about who am I. Then actually I will ask you, what do you want from this lecture today? And then comes our story where you can hopefully learn what to do as well as we did if you would like to do Earth observation company, and what to do better where we did mistakes and what maybe you can avoid. And finally, some challenges of the European Earth observation business as we see currently from a small company perspective. We established Kappa Zeta by now soon 10 years. It was 12th of October 2015, and I'm the CEO of it since 2019, so it's 6 years. I'm married. My wife is Latvian, actually. I consider myself half Latvian. I don't consider Latvia as a foreign country for myself. And we have a beautiful 2-year-old son coming to Latvia regularly. Just were 2 weeks ago here. Now again. I did PhD in synthetic aperture radar applications in University of Tartu. Part of it, 7 months, I also spent as a trainee in DLR Microwave and Radar Institute. I have also double masters in computer science and in space studies from ISU, International Space University, France. Are there any ISU related people? Not here, okay. Then I was the systems engineer of first Estonian satellite, EstCube-1, until its launch, 2013. And yes, I was in DLR 2 times. Then after graduating my PhD, for a short time, for a couple of years, I was a young researcher at the Tartu Observatory. Tartu Observatory, I think, is also well known for many of you. There was one ESA big company connected with Tartu Observatory. The logo somehow resembled very suspiciously Tartu Observatory logo, the previous version of it. So yeah, actually we are also, Kappa Zeta is a spin-off of Tartu Observatory. I was Estonian delegate at the Earth Observation Program Board, meeting 4 times per year, and that was interesting actually. It was exactly the time when Estonia had just joined ESA. And then I was sent there as the delegate as a young guy. And this was really interesting. I kind of like a 30-year-old science nerd in the, or then I was 29, 30. And then the other guys there are all like 60-year-old seniors and big teams behind them, trying to keep up the pace. But it was fun, and it was a nice experience, and got to know how ESA operates. My first serious job actually was in parallel with doctoral studies in Regio, AS Regio in Estonia, GIS and mapping company. I was space project manager for 4 years. Not actively publishing anymore, but looking back, the research we did was not so bad research. it's quite well cited. Mainly did it in 2014, 15, 16, and even before, from 2012. But my question now to you, like now I know a bit more who you are, but please don't be shy. What would you like to get from this lecture, from this topic, and from this day? No wrong answers. All answers are right. We are the right people to answer these questions.
How can science contribute to the business?
You would like to learn how can science contribute to the business?
How this big, in this case, trusts your knowledge to run a business.
How from ISABIC I can, as a researcher, take my knowledge into business?
Yeah.
Thank you. Something more? Okay, you come from the business, from banking to science. Cool. Not to science. That's very straightforward. Very good. Very good. One guy said, I think it was in some European Commission event, I think it was the Minister of Education of Poland who said that science converts money into knowledge, and the innovation converts knowledge into money. So it's a circle, absolutely. Some money has to come back to the science also. Good. Something more? Yes, please.
Knowing that in science, there's always a little fear, should, or business to be work, get your money back, so probably fear that balance
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah, we learned it quite hard way in the beginning. Yeah, it is. It is. In business, you really need to deliver and you need to keep your client happy one way or another. But yeah, that is very good. Very correct. Something more. Okay. Then thank you. Whenever you have more questions, please interrupt me. I am here for you. So how did I come to Earth observation research? I like the maps and geographies since childhood, and I think it's from my father. At school, I was an exact sciences nerd, going to all these Olympiads in physics and mathematics and chemistry and to space topics. I came to Mart Noorma, who I think you can say is a kind of a father of Estonian space program. Estonian, like the new era, of course, like from the end of 2000s. Of course, there was also the Soviet era, but these guys were mainly like grandfathers for us. And I came partly to space, largely actually to space thanks to Mart, because of his inspiration, and also because of treating people well. And this is something like since meeting him, I have tried to carry over to our teams wherever I am working. Then why more to the Earth observation research? Then I've always had this belief that there is no complex things, that every complex thing can be decomposed into a finite number of extremely simple concepts. And sometimes in maths, people get scared, there is this sum equations and stuff, but this is just a notation. And that's the language that make you confused. But actually behind this maybe strange and complex language, these marks actually are very simple things. You just add things, you multiply. No big rocket science in rocket science actually. And then in the beginning of my PhD years, I started to like synthetic aperture radar. It was such a cool instrument at how it can really work and operate. It's like it's basically the antenna can be a piece of wire, which is really cool. The antenna doesn't need to be matrix at all. It can be a piece of wire, and you form the 2D image still from this wire image by the motion, by the correct, I think, is to say the Doppler history of the signal. The Doppler history, and then in the range direction just by time. And then you do tricks like chirp compression there and so on. So I started to like this a lot and see how it really works. It works day and night and through the clouds, and you can even have colorful pictures from it, you know, when you have multiple polarizations or multiple bands. Yeah, and that was in 2010. And connected with the ESA training courses, the ESA education training courses. So actually, this was also a turning point for me, that I went to the ESA training course in Warsaw, and this was what Francesco was running. And there I met Paco Lopez-Decker, who is now a cooperation partner for our satellite mission. I met Francesco, and yeah, and there I was like there were these SAR experts giving the lecture, and I was just shooting them with questions. Like I had already done my homework, and then I squeezed the maximum out from the lecturers. I hope I was not too annoying for the other students, but I was like, I think you can say a comparison, like a kid in the candy shop. But how I came from Earth observation research to Earth observation business, and why? Then after graduating PhD and during my PhD years, I was going to conferences, workshops, research papers. There is this beautiful Polinzar conference in Rome, I think it still is, in Frascati. There are Living Planet, a lot of cool events, very interesting, very useful. And then I started to sense that there is so much talent around there willing to satisfy the curiosity and do the research 15 years ahead, maybe 25 years ahead. There is so little of the people who do it. They take the hard work and make this research into actual applications. And to do this, you need to do non-noble, maybe boring admin and organizing work. But to really see the change, I never want to be the one who just, let's say, blames anonymously that, oh, somebody would do this, and we are in a really tough situation, but it's all their fault. Like, if you want to see the change, then I'm blocking the view. Yeah? Thank you. So if you want to see the change, then be the change. And together with my co-founders, we were crazy enough to start the Earth observation company. We didn't know much actually what was ahead. We didn't know almost anything about accounting, about business, don't know much about people management. But there was said to be one common thing for the entrepreneurs, and this was said to be a sick optimism, is that you believe that somehow we are going to make it. And today, as Capaceta, we are not a unicorn. Don't expect this, but we are not that bad. We are doing well. So this year turnover will be a little more than 1.5 million euros. We have a team of 28 people. And we have annually recurring revenue from being the service provider for Estonian government and also for Danish government via subcontract with a local company, DHI. Now we are serving actually the third European government also for agricultural subsidy checks. We cannot disclose the name yet. Hopefully next year we can. And we are a coordinator of a large European Defence Fund project. So it's a lot of defense funding there around. You need to apply. Yeah, there is a picture of our team. Currently even a little bit bigger. But more about Kappa Zeta, it will be when we have the company presentations. This is not the topic of this lecture. We still have 25 minutes. I will try to be in the time. So how did we get from the research group into Kappa Zeta? So at first, when doing my PhD together with TLR in Microwave and Radar Institute, then I went back to Estonia, to Tartu, and we established the Synthetic Aperture Radar Research Group in Tartu. It was, at its peak, it was 10 people, all the master students, doctoral students, bachelors. And at some moment we did some experiments and we saw that the Sentinel-1 repeat pass coherence works so well for the moment detection. This was, wow, there is an application, and probably nobody yet has this knowledge that this application works so well. And that was a push. Actually, my other co-founder, Tanel Tamm, was already telling me a long time that, hey, Kaupo, we should establish a company. And then we did. So Kappa Zeta was really born from from an idea that, like, wake up one morning and say, hey, let's start a company. Why not to start the company? But it was from the need. There was a customer who had a real problem, and this was this agricultural subsidy checks need from the government. And then we established Kappa Zeta. We got breakthrough results. There was a customer, and off we go. Here is the timeline of how did we start. First, we met in 2012, and I was doing a presentation. I think it was in ESTGIS, in the GIS conference in Pärnu. And then Tanel just came after my presentation to me and said that, hey, we should cooperate, we should do something together. And quite soon, Tanel joined our Synthetic Aperture Radar Research Group. Then, 2015 summer, we had breakthrough results with the Sentinel-1 coherence for moment detection. And back then, Sentinel-1 was really new. Like now, I think for the young PhD students, especially, are in the beginning of their career, this Sentinel-1 is something like probably at the dust there already. It's like, oh, it's always been there. Probably, yeah, it's reliable. It's still useful. It's maybe like to me something like, I don't know, Landsat was in 2008 or 9. That, yeah, it's reliable, it's good, but it's not really new. But back then it was really new, and people didn't know what is possible to do with the data. And nobody knew that actually this repeat pass coherence has such a value as a vegetation proxy also. We also published, connected with this. Actually, just yesterday we got our first US patent accepted for the coherence computation. And this paper for the Sentinel-1 coherence paper, the Tamm et al., now has more than 100 citations. It was, I think it's fair to say that it was a landmark for the grassland monitoring with radar data. And then we established Kappa Zeta. Originally, we had 4 founders. Besides me and Tanel Tamm, also Kaarlis Saalite and Kalev Koppel. They left in 2019 at different reasons. That was actually one crisis moment for us, for sure. And for a short time, we were just 3 people company. In summer 2019, it was just me, Tanel, and Indrek Sünter, and all 3 are still with us. But after establishing a company, you need income from somewhere. It's not that just let's have a company. So first we still continued our existing jobs, and only in 2 years' time, in 2017 May, after we won the first ESA project, we quit the previous jobs and started to do Kappa Zeta almost full time. In 2020, ESAPIC Estonia, actually we joined a little bit earlier. ESAPIC Estonia we joined, I think, in late 2018 already. But in 2020, we went to this commercial accelerators where this startup community, you know, this not only the banking people, but the money people, this startup entrepreneurs. And we went to take part of their hackathons and acceleration events, and it turned out to be really useful. Most notably, probably this Super Angel one, where we went in spring 2020, and we got the support package from them, which included the leadership and communication training by Gil Crosby. And Gil Crosby is talking forward this Kurt Lewin principles of leadership. Actually, about the leadership principles and communication principles, I think like there are so many different terms and brands for it, so many different systems. To be fair, and I think it's mainly the golden principles are quite similar. It's a lot of rebranding and a lot of people try to invent new things, but it's mainly in the small details where the changes are. But I'm really thankful for this this training we got, because it has helped us to run the company so much better than before. And it's mainly about the soft skills. It's about taking time for the team. Before that, maybe I was very focused that got to do this research and this deep diving work myself very well, which is also important. But if you ignore the human aspect, then you also don't get very far. And past 5 years, we have grown really fast, and I'm confident that we continue growing almost 10 times in revenue and in people more than 5 times. From 2023, also we won the contract for Danish government via subcontract via DHI. In 23 autumn, 2 years ago, Martin Jussi joined. Actually, Martin Jussi was also a not Kappatseta, but the synthetic aperture radar research group master student in 2012, 13, 14. But then for more than 7 years, he was the head of space department in GGI Estonia. He was leading about 30 people. And then we had this crazy idea, this Friidisar satellite constellation, which I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. And this was so interesting for him and he believed into this mission so much that he quit the GGI job and he joined us. And thanks to him, now the mission has developed way faster than before. Yeah, but this was my story. This was Kappatseta story. Now comes the education part. How can I say? Sharing the knowledge. Please, please, please ask me questions, challenge me, oppose. Then you get more out of it. Otherwise, maybe it's just let's say, yeah.
How is the transition from university to your spin-off? Because I was thinking, well, maybe you develop your methodology, your studies with resources from Tartu Observatory, but then you started to realize, okay, I can do this and maybe have some clients, but I cannot use resources from university because otherwise that's from university. So how was that transition? You had to buy your own equipment, right?
Yes, we needed to buy our own equipment. That's for sure. Then we also had a spin-off contract, and we still have a spin-off contract with Tartu Observatory and University of Tartu, which regulates all this transition. But I must say that we were lucky to have really trained staff from the university. And if I can give some suggestions, then wherever in one institute or one work, the Earth observation business is still so small that trying to over-regulate it and let's say over-protect it and say that no, this is the property of the university and you shouldn't do any business with this. Just stealing the end of development. So I think that they did the right way to be friendly to us and to rather to like help us than to try to fight hard and chew and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we get that. What's your relation to university now?
Basically independent. Legally, we are not fine in any way.
But practically,
Practically.
university.
I did 3 lectures in the year. 1 in autumn, 2 in spring. And then time to time I supervise some groups. But this is really as a side.
Yeah, I have a question. Like,
Yeah.
how do you manage this? You've gone from like 3 people,
Yeah.
what was 20,
Yeah.
28.
Yeah.
How you find these employees? Just more focused on those who you see that they stay with you like at the drive. What would be the recipe for
It's actually for our case, it's a mix of many approaches. Now we have also used recruitment companies and recruitment to find the people. Then it's also personal networks. And at the moment, we are really bound by budget. And when we are able to close the investment fund, then we can take quite quickly 5 to 7 good candidates we already know, who we know are really good and help us forward. I think the key thing really is the one thing also like which team members you hire, and then also like how you treat the people. And then how can I say, to hire is rather easy, to keep and to collaborate over years is harder. Of course, you never can force anybody to stay, I don't know, that you gotta work with our company. Like, how is that? His decision, I respect him. We are still very good friends. And then sometimes there are, let's say, some independent reasons why people leave, like family reasons and so on. But still, I would say that this, that how long people are willing to work with you shows something. But I would say it's mixed. It's personal connections, it's recruitment companies. What we don't do is this mass advertisements in kind of newspaper or something like this, because the Earth observation, let's say, workforce or the talent is still so specific that you can do it really once actually, and then you get like a big list of candidates, like, but maybe 2 are who you would like to hire. Yeah. I don't know if I answered the question, but it's never. I wouldn't say that. I would say it's never easy, and it's the people are the biggest value of Capaceta, absolutely, and it's hard work to get the right people, but it's worth it. Yeah, the first recommendation is to have a strong client and clear need for your work. If you don't see this, if you don't have this, then running just on ESA projects or on, it's hard. And actually that's one of the challenges for the Earth observation business, that a lot of the demand actually is from the public sector. And how do we get these people from the public sector in the public institutions who are this demanding yet rewarding clients who are willing to order the Earth observation services for the benefit of the, even let's say, whole mankind. And I would like to see more of this. And what can we do to have it? Then second, yeah, you need some kind of good self-belief that sick optimism was said to be characteristic to all entrepreneurs. Obviously, there has been difficult times for us also. And the third point is also to this goes actually, Tainis, with your point very well. Is that your question? Is try to have the team members who are not too picky about the job, especially if you're small. But you don't run very far if you say that, hey, I'm here just the Earth observation analyst. I do only Earth observation analysis. I don't know anything about accounting. I don't know anything about talking to client. I don't want to do this. No, it's not going to work like this. You got to need the people who are also willing to go out from their comfort zone and, let's say, their specialty. You need the universalist approach. Of course, it's more convenient to do day-to-day, same thing. I'm used to do this. I know I'm good at it. But to do the company, you need this universalist people and resilient people who can do the difficult days also. I like a lot a quote of one of our angel investors, Andreas Weisbach, who was also head of Copernicus in European Commission. And he says that talented people are talented everywhere. I think there is a lot of truth. Of course, there are some limitations. I know myself, I tried as a young guy, I tried to do close to professional level sports in long distance running. Soon I realized I don't have the talent. So up to some level, of course, there are some limitations. But let's say a bright mind and willingness to cooperate is relatively universal, I would say. Then you do need consistency. I think this is one of our key strengths of Capaceta has been consistency. And already said before, good relations in the team is this principle that nothing replaces goodwill. And it's like how you direct the conversation and asking the right questions. It matters a lot. And also one thing, especially in the engineers team, it's sometimes underestimated, is that having these one-to-one meetings weekly is a part of your job, and it pays off. And you should keep really the meetings regular. And you cannot assume that when there is a problem, I will come to talk. Because the human behavior often is like this, that when you don't talk regularly and you don't talk about the good things also, then the bad things start to pile up. Then they pile up in 2 months, and then when people finally talk, then they explode. But why you didn't tell me earlier? Yeah. So good relations and regular communication, and having the meetings rather frequent and short than, let's say, every two years and very, very long. Also good relations with your clients and funding providers, obviously, which is also part of the company work. Then now the second bullet from this slide goes very well to the real topic of the lecture, from research to successful product or service, is don't underestimate the large-scale testing. If you do successful research in some lab conditions or in, let's say, 20 test fields, you see, it works so well. It works so well. It does, probably, and the underlying principle probably is right. But this goes also what you said in the beginning about expectations, is that in business they expect that it works all the time, and it's no uncertainty that you deliver, that you must always deliver. And we had a lot of hard work in 2017, 2018, when we went from the research to the countrywide, the Boeing checks, detection for a stove. The weather is different, the fields are different, the variety of the real world conditions is just so different, and I think there is no way to avoid it in almost any Earth observation application you do, that you need this large-scale testing. And nowadays, of course, with this AI and machine learning models, this means primarily not only the volume, not so much of the volume of your training data, but the variety of the training data. That you cover the different conditions, the seasons and the geographical variance, both in time and space. And the third point goes well with the first point, is that you got to have frequent client meetings. Somebody has to do it. This was also a thing, but we didn't do so well in the beginning. Still, we can do it better. I can confess, we can still do it better. And it's when you meet with the client frequently, then there is one good saying that tell that you are going to have a problem in advance, and you buy awful lot of goodwill. So when the client knows that this is a challenging thing, then they manage their expectations. So I would say that, yeah, EU market is still quite protectionist. Local companies are preferred. There was one public procurement, I'm not naming the country, where was said that the procurement was written in such a way that because of these and these arguments, only this local company can provide the service. Yeah, really. Yeah, but you never can force a client to love you if they don't. So to overcome this, what we do is to make friends and find the local partners, and it's just practical. It's just and it's also nicer. Then the second bullet is definitely not original, and it goes well what I said earlier, that we need more public procurements and we need strong clients to order the actual operational service and not so much the pilot projects and R&D grants. So this is a trap, and I've seen it quite a lot in the European Earth observation, especially in the applications companies, is that it's kind of more money comes there, and then ESA is not always too demanding on what you get out. Of course, you formally need to satisfy all these deliverables, what you promised in the proposal. But sometimes there are projects which don't deliver so much value. So I'm not telling you that, I've seen the other extreme also. The other extreme is that there are these pure commercial private funding focused startups. And it was especially widespread in, let's say, 2015-16. And they had seen this private venture capital funded success stories. They say no R&D grants, no public funding, pure private, so on. There is one guy, Rainer Sternfeld, who is now a fund manager in Nordic Ninja, a venture capital fund in Tallinn. And he was the Planet OS co-founder, was a successful exit. And actually he went this way, that no public R&D funding, no ESA projects, no European Commission projects. And after he did it and he sold this Planet OS, then he said that if he would do it again, he would do it differently. That still used this R&D funding. What I'm trying to tell you is that try to have a balance, that use the R&D funding, but don't be only on the R&D funding. Because if you have only R&D funding, then you have no client, let's say, feedback. You don't get the real feedback that how good your product actually is. Yeah, and as I already said, then sales and client relations development is also part of your work. And sales work is not somehow lower or less valuable, or let's say there is this noble research work and then there is this sales work. No, sales work is just as important as the research, as the engineering. And it's a special work to have the client meetings, to get their expectations. Our sales team, especially the head of the sales team, is so much better in listening to people than I am. I often come with my drive to sell my vision and idea how things should be done. But he's just there, being kind, being nice, listening, noting what the client wants, what is his problem, and not so much what I want to sell to him. So, yeah, have somebody in your team who can do this sales and client relations work and who is really good at it and who enjoys it. So what we did wrong, maybe this is more interesting for you. You want to see that, like, yeah, we can do better than Capaceta. So I think the biggest mistake we did in the beginning was to try to do everything on our own and not having so much and underestimating the value of partnerships and having team members to the things where the core team is not naturally good. From one hand, it's good and tempting to kind of to have this very resistant, let's say, the fighter mentality that somehow we are going to make it, we are not going to give up, but on the other hand, you might end up in jobs where you're not effective. You keep pushing yourself in the jobs where somebody else might do so much better. So yeah, go outside. I think the best advice would be just to like go out from your office to events like this, to the conferences, even better, go to the client conferences. Farmers, foresters, military people, find out what are their actual problems. Yeah, and probably in the early days, we underestimated this communication, people management aspect. We didn't take time this weekly one-to-one meetings. It was not, the time's up, yeah. Thanks, it's a couple of slides. I'm wrapping it up very soon. The coffee break is I am between you and the coffee break, yeah? So I'm stopping you from the coffee break. Okay, just very quickly. In the afternoon, actually, there is a long session with me with this business model canvas, right? I guess most of you take part of it. So maybe in the beginning of the business model canvas, I will talk the last 5 slides. So let's do like this and keep the schedule.